Friends, Tanzania is in crisis. Protests have erupted all over the country. Hundreds of citizens have gone to the streets against their own government. How has the government responded? With a strong hand. The military has been deployed to the street. At least 10 people have been confirmed dead in Salaam alone. Businesses have closed down, offices have been shut, and the government told civil servants not to show up at work. Instead, they should work from home. So, what's the cost of all this? The short answer is the recent October 29 elections. But that answer does not tell you everything. Tanzania is not a country known for electoral violence. It has been one of Africa's shining examples of a country that did not experience a coup because its democracy worked. So what is happening in Tanzania right now is not just a problem. It is a serious deviation from its 7 decades of experience as a nation. In short, Tanzania is going through a historical turning point. This could break Tanzania. At the center of it all is a woman who came into power with a lot of promise. Her ascent to the presidency was a breath of fresh air, and it sent hope across Tanzania and the whole world. Barely 4 years later, that woman is destroying Tanzania. Her name is Samia Suluhu Hassan. This is her story, and the story of how she changed Tanzania for the worse. Welcome to another episode of Authoritarianism. Please kindly like, share, and subscribe to our channel as it helps us do our work more. On March 17, 2021, Tanzania's larger-than-life president, John Magufuli, was declared dead. His death was so sudden and unexpected that most Tanzanians didn't know what to do. There was a massive outpouring of emotions from all over Tanzania. Magufuli had been their bulldozer president, the man who eschewed the trappings of corruption and built infrastructure for all Tanzanians. He had risen from being a teacher to being the president of the country. His was the classic grass to grace story. The official story said he died of heart attack, but many believe it was COVID-19, a disease he has spent months denying. It was the stain on his legacy, and now he was gone. His VP was sworn in 2 days later. Of course, she was none other than our Samia Suluhu Hassan. When she came into power, Tanzanians called her Mama Samia. It was an endearing term showing how much they loved her. International media called her a breath of fresh air. The West called her the reformer Tanzania had been waiting for. Under Magufuli, Tanzania had become one of Africa's most repressive states. Opposition leaders were jailed, journalists disappeared, even talking about COVID-19 was considered treason. But Samia promised something different. And she didn't just promise something different. She actually took steps in those early days to walk the talk. She reopened the country to the world. She recognized COVID-19, launched a vaccination campaign, and began talking about dialogue and democracy. Foreign donors returned, the IMF released funding, her approval ratings soared. In her first year, optimism filled the air. People began calling her Mama Utu, the mother of humanity. She launched reconciliation talks with opposition leaders like Freeman Mbowe of Chadema party. In March 2022, Mbowe was released from jail after serving months in detention. People thought it was a sign of liberalization. For a moment, it seems as though she was really the reformer Tanzania was waiting for. However, she soon showed that people's hope was misplaced. It is an irony that one of the policies that was supposed to display her as the true reformer became the sign of things to come. She had created a task force to study electoral reforms in Tanzania. The task force recommended key reforms: independence for the Electoral Commission, freedom for opposition parties, and a review of Tanzania's constitution. If these reforms were implemented, they would make Tanzania's elections better and deliver more democracy. Guess what she did? Her government ignored every major proposal in the recommendations. Instead of reforming democracy, she restructured power. This was the launch of her grab for power. By 2024, the max was gone. Samia's government introduced 2 major laws: the Presidential Parliamentary and Councillors Elections Act and the Independent National Electoral Commissions Act. They sounded progressive, but inside the fine print was the blueprint of control. The so-called Independent Commission was anything but independent. Every member of the selection panel, every commissioner was appointed by the president herself, the same president who would later be on the ballot. Returning officers who managed polling stations had to be public servants, meaning loyalists, and the new laws failed to allow appeals against presidential results. In simple terms, once the president wins, no one can question it. Even worse, the government ignored 10 judicial rulings calling for electoral independence. only one of those rulings was ever implemented. The message was unmistakable. The law is not a safeguard, it is a tool. The state returned to what it knew best: repression. Opposition figures were arrested again. Journalists were threatened. 2 newspapers were banned. A cartoonist was detained. And those who once believed Samia's presidency marked a new dawn realized it was only a softer mark for the same old face. By 2023, Tanzania's democracy was backsliding faster than ever. Amnesty International documented widespread torture, abductions, and the killings of activists. Opposition leader Tundu Lissu, shot multiple times a year earlier, was arrested again, this time on charges of treason. Even critics within the CCM were not safe. When former Ambassador Humphrey Polepole questioned government actions, he was swiftly silenced. The playbook was clear: show openness long enough to earn legitimacy, then shut the door before anyone notices. While political freedoms collapsed, Samia presented herself abroad as a reformer. She reopened ties with investors, attended Global Summit, and announced the ambitious Vision 2050, Tanzania's plan to reach middle-income status. But beneath the speeches was paralysis. Investors complained of the same old problems: unpredictable taxes, corruption, and bureaucracy. Permits took months, sometimes years. Officials demanded bribes, and Magufuli's old loyalists, many reinstated by Samia, kept the same networks of control alive. Even in the digital economy, new restrictions appeared. The government ordered anyone using VPNs to register them, a move widely seen as an attempt to monitor online activity. Banks were forced to store data only inside Tanzania. Foreign investment stalled, confidence evaporated. The promise of a new economic dawn turned into the same great twilight of old politics. Nowhere was the regime's brutality clearer than in Ngorongoro.
And several herders from Ngorongoro are nursing serious injuries inflicted on them during a forceful eviction from Ngorongoro National Park by the Tanzanian police force.
There, thousands of indigenous Maasai were violently evicted from their ancestral lands to make way for a government-backed game reserve. Security forces surrounded villages, seized livestock, and cut off access to schools and hospitals. Human rights groups documented shootings, torture, and sexual violence. Hundreds were displaced, some fled to Kenya, but the violence was not only about land, it was political. As punishment for resisting eviction, tens of thousands of Maasai were stripped of their voting rights. Their voter registrations were deleted, effectively silencing over 100,000 citizens. This act of political reprisal was one of the main reasons Freedom House downgraded Tanzania's status to not free. When the Maasai organized protests in 2024, blocking tourist roads in Ngorongoro, the state responded with more arrests and intimidation. Even ruling party members who spoke out were detained. By 2025, the message was unmistakable: resistance equals erasure. Tanzania's ruling party, the CCM, is one of Africa's oldest political machines, in power for over 60 years, longer than any other party on the continent. It was born during independence, shaped by Julius Nyerere's one-party socialism, and perfected by successive leaders. Samia knew that to survive she had to control it, and so she turned inwards, reshaping the party to secure her place. Within 2 years, she replaced intelligence chiefs 3 times and reshuffled the cabinet 4 times. She dismissed ministers like John Makamba and Nape Nwaye for daring to question electoral integrity. At the same time, she welcomed back hardliners from Magufuli era, men like Paul Makonda and Dr. Biteko, to appease the powerful factions he needed to survive. It was a delicate dance. Purge your rivals, co-opt your enemies, and reward your loyalists. But the cost was clear. Every political move was about control, not reform. What was the result? A ruling party more powerful, more insulated, and more authoritarian than ever before. By early 2025, the stage for Tanzania's general election was already rigged long before the first ballot would be printed. The main opposition party, Chadema, had been cornered. Its rallies disrupted, its funding cut, and its leaders repeatedly dragged through the court. At the center of it all stood one man, Tundu Lissu. Lissu had survived what few politicians ever do. In 2017, he was shot 16 times outside his home in Dodoma. The gunmen were never caught. After spending 3 years in exile, he returned in 2020 to contest the election and lost under circumstances international observers called deeply flawed. When Samia Suluhu took office in 2021, she called for reconciliation and Lissu cautiously praised her tone. But the truce did not last. In 2023, police broke up one of his party's meetings in Arusha, beating supporters and confiscating equipment. In February 2025, months before the election, Lissu was arrested again. this time on charges of incitement and treason, after publicly criticizing the government's new electoral laws. He was denied bail and within weeks disqualified from the race. His deputy, John Heche, was arrested soon after. For many Tanzanians, the message was unmistakable. If ballots could not silence Tundu Lissu, bureaucracy and prison would. And when the Independent National Electoral Commission finally banned Chadema from the October 29 vote, Tanzania was left an election without a challenger. President Samia Suluhu Hassan would stand virtually unopposed, a victory designed not earned. For the first time in decades, Tanzania's multi-party system was a democracy in name only. When the National Electoral Commission announced Samia as the winner of the elections on 29 October, all hell broke loose. The people were tired. They came out en masse to protest. Protests had begun even before the election. There were protests a day before the elections, on the elections day, and a day after the election. The bottom has fallen through. The European Union lawmakers called the election a fraud that had been unfolding for months. How can it not be? This was an election where there was only one candidate, and it was announced that she went ahead to win 95% of the vote. Obviously, Tanzanians were not taking it, so they are fighting back. Within 5 years, the woman who came with a lot of promise has destroyed one of Africa's most stable countries. Where does Tanzania go from here? Can it return to the ways of democracy? That is the question on most people's mind today. Our hope is that Tanzania returns back to the old ways, continue on its journey of progress. We wish Tanzania the very best. Thank you for watching this episode. Share this with someone. Until I see you again, bye bye.